As I mentioned last time, key to the forming of the anti-hero is the matter of tragedy. The unkept promise, the surprise betrayal, the one they couldn't say. Take a close look and it's in there somewhere. Same is true of most traditional heroes as well, but it's usually in the way they deal with the event that sets them apart. Do they step back from the brink? Do they stay their hand when offered the gift of vengeance? Or do they go on to kill everything forever? Frank Castle was originally born Francis Castiglione, growing up in a neighbourhood where crime, both organised and random, was king. Frank originally tried to escape by becoming a Roman Catholic priest, but found he was unable to forgive the guilty. Kind of an important thing for a priest. Later on in his career as a freelance peacekeeping agent, Castle would, ironically, encounter a priest having the exact same problems. Only instead of hanging up his vestments, he took to hacking up his guilty parishioners and calling himself the Holy. You can probably guess how that ended for anyone not called Frank Castle. Having turned his back on the church, he decided to enlist in the army, leaving his pregnant wife Maria back in America. He entered the Marines, rising to the rank of captain, and was sent to Vietnam, where he took to combat like a bonfire to burning. He served 2 tours before returning to the US. However, this wasn't enough for Frank, and changing his name to Frank Castle, he signed up again, illegally, for the 3rd tour. Something that really should have set alarm bells ringing in his nearest and dearest. Punisher Born, a 4-issue miniseries, casts an eye on the end of Frank's time in Vietnam, having him stationed at the remote fire-based Valley Forge in Cambodia. Scholars of American history will probably recognise the game and can more than likely give a good guess as to how that one turns out. I suggest Frank was, in essence, being groomed by certain forces that would offer him the endless war he'd always secretly dreamed of. It's a story that shows it's entirely possible to mix up the Punisher with the supernatural and, more importantly, not fuck it up entirely. I don't even have to mention what I'm referring to at this point, do I? You just know on instinct. Frank eventually returned to his family, now consisting of a son and a daughter, and trying to fit back into regular life, took them all to Central Park to get used to the idea of having them around more often. The day would quickly take a turn for the tragic. The family, purely by accident, found themselves caught in the crossfire of a mob hit. Maria, Lisa, and Frank Jr. all died that day. Frank himself wasn't so lucky. When he turned to the police for justice, he found himself blocked at every turn thanks to a mix of mob corruption and the police's own apathy. Unable to find satisfaction the legal way, he took matters into his own hands, using his army training, not to mention an endless wealth of guns, knives and explosives, to take the war to the mob. For Frank Castle, Vietnam never really ended. It just changed the scenery. The Punisher is something of an anomaly in Marvel. You see, the Marvel Universe works on what we call a floating timescale. So the earliest major events, such as the Avengers forming, Peter Parker getting bit by the spider, and all that stuff, happened in nebulous 10 years ago, with background details being updated as needed. Frank Castle, however, has always served in Vietnam. So far, he's never been updated to have served in, say, Operation Desert Storm or Afghanistan, Ultimate Marvel aside. That means despite looking like a fit man in his mid to late 30s, Castle should be at least pushing 60. The mature reader series Punisher Max is the only series that actually references this. The second run of the series, written by Jason Aaron, shows us a Punisher that feels every single year grinding him down. Another facet is Castle's very strong moral code. He will not, under any circumstances, do anything that will harm or injure an innocent, something his enemies have exploited in the past. He's also held back from killing American soldiers without damn good reason, to the point where he refused to lift a finger against Captain America while the latter was beating the unholy hell out of him. Despite their differing methods, Castle has always respected Cap, not just as a soldier, but as a symbol of all that America could and should be. As an aside, Frank has actually worn the shield both in and out of continuity. Remember, even before he started his crusade, Frank was, first and foremost, an excellent soldier. Despite the screeds and screeds of imitators over the years, Frank Castle has managed to stand alone, both as a character and an icon. He's the voice in all of us that wishes we could do something about the monsters we see on the news day in, day out. He's the justice we wish we could bring to the corporations who take pride in being above the law. And as long as people feel anger and frustration at the lack of fairness and honesty in an unfair world, there will always be a place for the Punisher in fiction.